Yeah, we back. Now, today's going to be a quick video. Information warfare continues. Now, if you remember, like last week, a couple weeks ago, I broke down that article, that slander piece, that hit piece that was put out by the Council on Foreign Relations. As you already know, one of the major foreign policy think tanks in the United States, with a lot of Western corporate interests back in the organization. Now, recently, I saw another hit piece came out recently by the Financial Times. I might break that down on their Patreon. Go to their Patreon. Dropped 2 fire videos on their Patreon this morning. I was in my bag. Listen, go check it out. And once you sign up for the Patreon, you gain access to 20 videos in total that have never been on the YouTube. Go join that Patreon right now. Now, anyways, like I said, information warfare continues. Now, today we're going to be talking about a lady by the name of, I don't really know how to pronounce her name, so I'm going to just say Miss Wade, right? Mrs. Wade, I'm going to call her that, right? So Miss Wade, she came on the social media today and she said this: I genuinely think that Africa will develop faster once we stop idolizing Thomas Sankara, stop idolizing Kwame Nkrumah, stop idolizing Jerry Rawlings, stop idolizing Patrice Lumumba, and stop falling for the Ibrahim Traoré propaganda that is going on right now. Okay. Now, I don't know what inspired her to just come out and just share this information with us unprovoked, but for whatever reason, she felt that this was important to share. Now, she also wrote an article, as you can see, take a look up on the screen, why I am not excited about the AES. We're going to get into that article later. But before we get into that article, let's learn a little bit more about the topic at hand, right? Miss Wade is a Senegalese entrepreneur who was raised in France. She gained initial fame for a TED Talk she made in 2017 about what she argues is an excessive regulatory environment in Africa, okay, which forces young Africans to emigrate for economic reasons. Wade has been known since at least 2004 for her business and entrepreneurial ventures, including creating a soft drink company that sells soft drinks in the United States and global markets using traditional African ingredients such as hibiscus. Okay, now this is the individual that is giving her authoritative opinions on legendary black men that risk their lives for their people. A lady that sells soft drinks. She sells juice. Okay, anyway, let's continue. Take a look up on the screen. Miss Wade is an affiliate of the libertarian group called the Atlas Network and coordinates efforts on behalf of the organization in Africa. Okay, so she is a agent or representative of the Atlas Network. What is the Atlas Network? The Atlas Network is a NGO based in the United States that provides training, networking, and grants for libertarian, free market, and conservative groups around the world. Now, I'm not going to comment on the glaring elephant in the room. We'll comment on that later. But anyways, let's take a look at some of the reactions on social media, and then we're going to jump into an article later on in the video. This person said, can you elaborate? How does idolizing the aforementioned hamper development? Now, time out. That is how you got to approach anybody who comes with that type of nonsensical rhetoric, right? When somebody just unprovoked out of nowhere just starts throwing dirt on the memory of our forefathers who came before us, who risked everything, who risked their life. Trust me, I understand. Deep down inside, it could provoke you to get angry, belligerent. Trust me, I understand. But in that moment, control the passion, control the energy, because the ancestors might be calling from the grave and tell you to snap out and crash out. But don't crash out. Just ask them, okay, fine. How does me showing respect and paying homage and walking in the path and ideology of my forefathers, how does that hamper my development? And just give them the opportunity to try to intellectually defend their rhetoric. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to end up sounding stupid. But anyway, let's continue. This person said, do you know how confused you have to be to think like this as an African? Now, we got to be honest. We got to address the elephant in the room, right? The type of men that she goes home to, the type of men that she prefers to be with, she probably can't really big up those type of black men in their presence, right? In the same way, a woman can't come around me and start bigging up Napoleon Bonaparte and start bigging up General Charles de Gaulle. I'm not hearing that. A woman is not going to come around me and start singing the virtues of Thomas Jefferson. I'm not hearing none of that. So I'm sure it's the same way in reverse, right? The type of man that she prefers to be with, she cannot come around bigging up Patrice Lumumba. Hell no. Anyway, let's continue. This person said, the people that you mentioned are the outliers in African politics, meaning that we have had a lot of leaders who are not Pan-Africanists. So by this logic, Africa should be developed by now. Because the question, therefore, is why has not Africa developed with lots of non-Pan-African head of state? Now that was an excellent question. You see the intellectual prowess of the black man. You see, the brother right here said, okay, so you say that we should not pay homage and show respect to the memory of the very few, the handful of legendary black men who proclaim Pan-Africanist ideals, right? So we're supposed to discard their memory. So by your logic, Africa should be developed because those men were the outliers, right? Those men were the ones who came along, every now and again. But the vast majority do not follow in their ideology or their footsteps. So by your logic, Africa should be booming, right? Because the Pan-Africans were all killed and driven away. So by now, Africa should be a paradise, right? But obviously, her logic falls flat. So shout out to that brother right there. Excellent observation. Excellent rebuttal. Shout out to y'all. This brother said, it is easy for you to criticize these people because you live in the modern world and have access to endless information in the palm of your hand. The leaders back then were under economic warfare and had a fraction of the resources that you have. Now, shout out to that brother, for using the term, economic warfare. I'm starting to see certain terms proliferating through the atmosphere and disseminated through the community. Shout out to y'all, man. Anyway, let's continue. This person said, Lumumba left power over 40 years ago. If he was the problem, then why hasn't Congo developed? Nkrumah left power over 50 years ago. If he was the problem, why hasn't Ghana developed? If idolizing these people is the problem, then China would not have developed because they really idolize Mao. Now listen, the Chinese, when it comes to their ancestors, they don't play about their ancestors. In fact, I seen a video the other day, right? So the Chinese have this statue of these two traitors who, betrayed a legendary Chinese figure like 1,000 years ago. And people come by the statue, they slap the statue, they spit on the statue, they took off their shoe and beat up the statue, right? Just to throw dirt on the memory of the traitors and the enemies of the state, right? As you can see on the video, right? So the Chinese, when it comes to their ancestral history, when it comes to their heroes and their legendary forefathers and their foremothers, they don't play about that. They don't play about that. But for whatever reason, when it comes to us, everybody wants us to just throw our ancestors in the grave, in the dustbin of history, and never acknowledge them or respect them or show love to them. No, I'm going to show love to my forefathers and my foremothers every chance I get. And the more you tell me not to, I'm going to go even harder. Just because you told me not to, I'm going to go even harder now. Stop playing with me. Anyway, this person said, many on this list have long been dead, together with their influence. Ibrahim just bursted onto the scene. They are not the reason Africa is not developing faster. Leave people's heroes alone. Now, listen, obviously, this lady right here is here to push whatever agenda that she may have, right? Obviously, when you lay up and you intimately mix and mingle with certain groups of men, I understand why black men taking certain geopolitical positions may be deemed as a threat to you and your personal household interests. But anyway, that's the topic for another day. But anyway, I want to get into the article that she wrote, basically going in depth on why she said that she is not a fan of the AES. She's not a fan of the captain. She's not a fan of the commander-in-chief, President Assimi Goïta, and she's definitely not a fan of President Chiani taking back the uranium mines. Anyway, she's going to explain to us her position as to why she feels that way. Let's get into it. Look at what's happening across Africa right now. In the Sahel region, we are seeing French troops being kicked out. Many people are celebrating this as a victory. But let me ask you something. Will removing the French soldiers put food on anyone's table? Will it create jobs for the Africans? Will it make electricity more accessible? Now, time out. I'm just going to respond to her as we go, like a conversation. Now, yes, removing the French troops off the territory, yes, it does. Yeah, because the French are not here to put food on anybody's table, right? The French did not set up the military bases in order to create jobs for you. No, the French military was stationed there to protect the corporate interests of the French oligarchy. So the French oligarchy and the common African man and woman, we don't have the same interests. So yes, removing the French military apparatus away from the territory, yes, that does move us closer to being able to put food on the table and chart our own path for self-determination. Yes, it does. Now let's continue. She said, getting rid of foreign powers might feel good, but it doesn't solve real problems. Okay, so kicking the white man out, it might feel good, but it doesn't solve anything. We got to keep the white man inside the house with us. Okay, I understand why you feel that way. Let's continue. She said, I've sat through countless speeches about quote unquote African liberation and quote unquote fighting imperialism. These speeches sound nice. They get people excited, but here's what I've learned from building businesses in Senegal and traveling around Africa. Speeches do not create jobs. Rhetoric doesn't build factories. Anti-colonial slogans don't improve our education systems. Now, I could sit here and debunk her, line for line, but I'm going to let my good brother, David Hundayan, do the honors, and I'm going to come back and we're going to continue. Let's go.
So who's telling the truth? Well, you know what they say, men lie, women lie, but accurate and properly contextualized numbers don't. So let's look at the African Development Bank's numbers. According to the AFDB, the country's inflation rate fell off a cliff from 14.1% in 2022 to just 0.7% in 2023, driven primarily by improved food supplies. Think about that. In other words, after being driven away by insecurity prior to Ibrahim Traoré's takeover, Burkinabe farmers have been able to return to their farms and road networks have been secured, permitting food supply to be so plentiful that inflation fell by 95% in just 1 year. The agricultural industry periodical, Milling Middle East and Africa, also estimates that Burkina Faso will achieve 111% of its cereal harvest needs this year. And while this is going on, there's also a quiet construction boom going on in Bobo Dioulasso, which recently opened a new 500-bed teaching hospital, and in Ouagadougou, where new shopping malls and residential buildings are going up. Does any of this strike you as the sign of a failed state without territorial sovereignty that is led by a pretender with no capacity?
All right, we back. Now, she went on to say, let me tell you a short story. When I started my first business, I did not face problems because of colonialism. Okay, we already see what time it is. Basically, leave the white man alone. Why you guys want to hurt the white man? Leave the white man alone. Okay, I understand. I understand why you feel that way, baby. I understand. You see, in order to be around these men, you got to dumb yourself down. You got to say, listen, stop talking about colonialism. Stop talking about the European. I understand. I get it. Trust me, I understand. The same way if a woman was around me, she would have to comport herself in a certain way, right? Certain ideologies and mentalities are not compatible with me. So in order for a woman to be with me, she's going to have to adjust to certain things. She's going to have to be compatible with my lifestyle, my worldview, my politics, my values, and my personal and collective agendas. So I'm sure it's the same way for these other groups of men, right? In order to be around them, you got to be compatible with their values, their lifestyle, and their worldview. Now, anyway, let's continue. She went on to say, when I first started my business, I did not face problems because of colonialism. I faced problems because it took 2 years to register a business. I needed 50 different permits. Corruption was everywhere. I was obligated to pay a 45% tariff to get started. These are the real enemies holding Africa back. Now, let's debunk that. Now, she says that the real enemies holding Africa back is not our ancestral adversaries, but actually the bureaucracy and the tariffs and the red tape that it takes to get certain things done. And I've actually mentioned that on a video. If you remember my video that I spoke about the president of Botswana, who actually saluted the Captain Ibrahim Traoré. That video was entitled "President of Botswana Salutes Captain Ibrahim Traoré," right? And he actually said, and I actually said in that same video, one of the main things that I don't really like is, especially as it relates to so-called, democratic governments, is how slow it takes for action to be taken, right? And the president of Botswana, he was actually saying something very similar. And he said that he actually admired Captain Ibrahim Traoré because of how fast he moves, right? He says that Captain, he thinks of something one day and the next day he's already moving. It's already in action.
Traoré is doing them. Traoré wakes up, dreams them up. Following morning, he makes a pronouncement. It is law. It is policy. Action follows. And I wake up and I say stuff. They look at me and say, what is this? What is this man talking about? That the structures that are in place are not properly suited to the attainment of quick action. So you need to subvert some of these rules and processes unapologetically. And I will do it.
All right, we back. Now, something else I want to point out. She is from Senegal. She's talking about, I believe, her experiences doing business in Senegal, right? Now, Senegal, for the longest time, up until very recently, with the new leadership that just came into power, Senegal was known as a key Western ally, aligned with Western interests, aligned with French interests. Listen, the French military bases, French companies, everything all around, right? So they were doing the complete opposite of what Ibrahim Traoré and the captain, President Assimi Goïta, Commander-in-Chief, President Chiani, Senegal was doing the complete opposite of what the Sahel Alliance countries, the AES, was doing, right? So by your logic, Senegal should have been developed, right? But here you are complaining about the Senegalese bureaucracy, right? So the Senegalese bureaucracy got you so mad that now you're trying to bash the AES, you're trying to bash the captain. But where's the connection between the two? Where's the connection between the Western-backed Senegalese bureaucracy and Captain Ibrahim Traoré? Explain that to me. See, this is the delusions that you got to come up with when you're laying up with the enemy, right? The Senegalese bureaucracy don't got nothing to do with the AES. I'm sorry to tell you. Maybe a white man convinced you of that, but that is not the reality. The bureaucracy that you're talking about, that existed long before the captain was even an adult. When he was a young boy, and that was already there. Before he was born, that was already there. Before he even joined the military, that was already there. So how are you going to hold him accountable for the Senegalese bureaucracy that gave you a hard time starting a business when there is no connection between the two? The Senegalese government, just like you, was locked in with the white man and following the dictates of the white man. So that's why it was giving you a hard time, right? So listen, the captain is taking a different approach. We kicking the white man out the country before whatever reason that got you so mad. Anyways, let's continue. She went on to say, when Singapore became independent, they were as poor as we were. But instead of giving useless speeches about colonialism, damn. See, I just saw the captain. I just saw a clip of the captain, as she calls it, giving one of his, useless speeches, as she calls it. And he was actually paying homage to the Senegalese tirailleurs that actually served in World War II under the French. Ironically, Senegal, her country. And the captain actually paid homage to them in one of his, as she says, useless speeches. Anyway, let's talk about the Senegalese shooters that served in World War II. Her ancestors, right? Her forefathers that captain paid homage to. I actually did a video on it some months back, right? Take a look at this headline. That was in the news a few months ago. President Macron acknowledges the 1944 massacre of West African troops by the French army. French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday for the first time recognized the killing of West African soldiers by the French army back in 1944 as a massacre in a letter addressed to the Senegalese authorities. Between 35 and 400 West African soldiers who fought for the French army in the Battle of France in 1940 were killed on the 1st of December in 1944 by French soldiers after what the French described as a mutiny over unpaid wages, right? So her forefathers, after fighting valiantly in World War II, demanded the French government pay them their wages that they earned on the battlefield so they can go home to their families and take care of their wives and their children, right? Let's continue. The West Africans were members of the unit called Tirailleurs Sénégalais, a corps of colonial infantry in the French army. According to historians, there were disputes over unpaid wages in the days before the massacre, but on December 1st, French troops rounded up the West African soldiers, mostly unarmed, and shot and killed them. Now, these are the men that she is trying to wag her finger at us because we kicking them out the country. We telling them take your military and get the hell out the country. She's telling us that's not going to put food on your table. Kicking the white man out, that's not going to do anything. Leave him alone. It's not about colonialism. It's about bureaucracy. Like, listen, and y'all wonder, brothers, y'all wonder why I have the ideology and the mentality that I have. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, the captain is the only head of state that I've seen openly pay homage to those men, right? The captain, in one of his useless speeches, he was talking about how our ancestors fought in World War II, right? And he had mentioned the Senegalese shooters, the Senegalese infantry. And she downplays that and says he's just giving a useless speech on colonialism. That is crazy. But like I said, it's what you got to do to appease the sensibilities of the adversary. Let's continue. She went on to say, instead of giving useless speeches about colonialism, Lee Kuan Yew focused on making it easy to start businesses, fighting corruption relentlessly, investing in education, building world-class infrastructure. Today, Singapore is richer than the former colonial master, Britain. Now that's real independence, and African leaders should take notes. So, time out. We're supposed to discard the memory of our ancestors. We're supposed to spit on the memory of Patrice Lumumba, who was killed before he even had the chance to implement his dreams, his vision, and we're supposed to look up to the ancestors of other groups of men. That's crazy. That's crazy, brothers. I'm telling you, when you marry your black woman, make sure you get with a black woman that loves black men, brothers. If you get with a black woman that doesn't love black men and she has affection towards other groups of men, she gonna have your children worshiping Asian men or some other nonsense. She gonna have your children spitting on the memory of Marcus Garvey and Patrice Lumumba. Listen, these women that be mixing and mingling with these other groups of men, I ain't gonna say too much about it, but I want to address her comparison to Singapore. Number one, Singapore has its own history, its own background. Singapore came up in its own unique geopolitical context, so it's not a direct comparison. Number one, the captain only been in power for 2 years. When you make the comparison to Singapore, didn't the guy she mentioned, what's his name, Lee Kuan Yew, wasn't he in power for 30 years or something like that? Right? So when you're talking about all these milestones that were achieved, You're trying to make the comparison between the heads of state in the AES who've only been in power for a handful of years, and you're comparing them to a man who ruled his country for multiple decades, right, from the 50s to the 90s or something like that, and who received enormous amounts of Western backing, Western funding, Western military cooperation. And every time an African leader wants to stay in power for multiple decades, you call him a despot, a tyrant, and a dictator. So you're comparing him to somebody who was in power for multiple decades, and he just came into power the other day. So can we at least give the brother 10 years at least before we come back and try to compare him to, these Singaporean dictators who ruled their country for multiple decades? Let's give the brother at least 10 years, right? You trying to give the brother his report card. It's only been like 30 months, right? And you're comparing him to men who ruled that country for 30 years. And you expect me to think that you're arguing in good faith? No, you're not. No, you're not. Anyway, let's continue. She went on to say, look at Mali. In January 2025, the government seized $245 million worth of gold from Barrick Gold's Lulagonkado gold mine. Now, that $245 million, the price of the gold went up. It's about, damn near 320 now. But I just want to, make the correction. Since you wrote the article, the price of gold went up to 320 million. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue. Now, I know some people celebrated this as, quote unquote, taking back our resources. But think about what this really means for Africa's future. When I speak to young entrepreneurs across Africa, they often ask me, isn't it good that we're standing up to these foreign companies? Let me explain why this kind of thinking keeps us poor. Right here. Now, listen, she about to defend the Western multinationals. Let's continue. First, let's understand what happens when a country seizes private property, right? The gold is the private property of the white man. Let's continue. It's like putting up a giant billboard that says, do not invest here. You will lose all your money. Companies have choices. They are not forced to invest in Africa. When Barrick Gold suspended their operations in Mali, they didn't just take their gold mining equipment. They took their expertise, their technology, and their connections to the global markets. Now, first things first, in her entire, half-baked legal defense of the white man's corporate interests, she failed to mention the reason why the gold was seized in the first place. You see, you got to watch these types, man. She said all that garbage, right? And I'm going to tell you to your face, you're talking a whole bunch of garbage right now. But listen, I understand you have to literally dumb yourself down to lay up with these individuals. But let me tell you why you're talking garbage. Not once did you mention the reason why the gold was taken in the first place. Why was the gold taken? The gold was taken because they committed tax fraud. And not just, regular tax fraud like, oh man, I owe the IRS, 80,000. No, we're talking about in the realm of $500 million in tax fraud. That's why the gold was taken, right? And they only took like 245 million, as you said, right? So they still owe some more money. They still owe some more. Like, listen, that went to the tax payment, right? So because the white man failed to pay his taxes, the white man broke the law. The white man was committing international financial crimes all across the world. She is now wagging the finger at her own people, saying, leave the white man alone. Yes, the white man committing tax fraud, but he's taking away his technology. We're losing the white man's technology. You see, brother, this is why you got to stay away from women who date outside the race. You think I'm just running my mouth, brother. You think I'm just running my mouth, man. And it's crazy because she knows damn well wherever she live at. Like, I think she lives somewhere in Texas or something. I think she lives in the United States because obviously, like we mentioned before, she is on the payroll of a United States think tank. So would the United States allow a foreign multinational to extract hundreds of millions of dollars worth of natural resources and run off without paying their taxes? And you don't think the FBI is going to come seize their property to collect on them back taxes? But see, when we do it, when the black man do it, all of a sudden you wagging your finger, right? Because I understand, right? When you laid up with the white man, you got to let him know, baby, it's okay. Listen, the black man, I'm going to get the black man right. Don't worry. I'm going to keep the black man in check. Don't worry. Let's continue. She said, now, many countries have launched arbitration cases against authorities in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. As a consequence, mining companies are moving to East Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. These countries are getting smarter about these issues. Meanwhile, we in West Africa are still playing the old game of control and confiscation, and our young people are paying the price in lost jobs, lost opportunities, and lost fortunes. Now, listen, she says that we are now going to lose jobs and lose opportunities and lose our fortunes if we kick the white man out the country and assert our sovereignty. But you said these companies are launching arbitration cases, lawsuit after lawsuit. So it seems to me that they are the ones who are losing opportunities and stressed out about losing their fortune, right? Because as you said, they've been launching arbitration after arbitration after arbitration. But you're trying to make it seem like they're doing this out of the generosity of their own heart, right? Because they want to provide opportunities to the downtrodden, right? They're just so passionate. That's why they're launching arbitration after arbitration, because they want to give us jobs and opportunities. Please, please, please. Anyway, let's continue. She went on to say, every time a government seizes private property, they are not just taking assets, they are destroying the trust and predictability that businesses need to operate. And by the way, we Africans should really learn this. It's not about who owns the gold in the ground, it's about who can create value from it. Now, she says 2 words that stuck out to me. When you seize the private property of the foreign multinationals, she says you are destroying the trust and predictability that the multinationals need in order to operate, right? So when I hear that, what I hear is she's basically saying that you need to allow the foreign multinationals to loot the country with abandon, right? Let them run off without paying their taxes. Let them underreport on their extractions. Let the foreign multinationals have the playing field. Let them do whatever they want, right? Because that is how, according to her, you build the trust. And you allow them to have the predictability they need in order to operate. Why? Because when you examine the think tank that she is associated with, the Atlas Network, they believe in things like the free market, no regulation, no government regulation, right? Let the foreign multinationals run wild, right? They owe $500 million in taxes. Who cares, right? That's the mentality of the Atlas Network. That's why she's coming to the defense of the Western foreign multinationals, because she is in the pay of the white man who's associated with the Western multinationals, right? So that's why she is defending Barrick Gold, who stole $500 million from an African country. And the only way this makes sense to her, I'm assuming, is because, she be laying up with the adversary. So maybe she believes that a victory for the adversary is a victory for me and my kids or whatever. Maybe that's the mentality. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue. I also saw that she mentioned other governments like, Kenya, for example, things like that. We need to be more like Kenya. And no offense to my family out in Kenya. No offense to y'all, I got love for y'all, but Kenya is not exactly the image of, African sovereignty and African dignity, on the continent. I don't think black men with dignity would want their country to look like Kenya, especially with them tourists that come from Europe and do what they do. I don't think black men with self-love want to idolize Kenya. Kenya excels in certain things, but overall, I don't think, black men with dignity want to have a country like Kenya. It's not really the image of African dignity for black men. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. If you know, you know. Anyway, I want to go back to what she said, right? So if you kick out the foreign multinationals, you're going to lose jobs, you're going to lose your fortunes, you're going to lose your opportunities. Well, the foreign multinationals have been operating with impunity in the region for, many, many, many decades. So I would love for her to point out to me, the vast opportunities and fortunes that have been built for the local population. I would love for her to respond to me and show me, the vast benefits that we receive from the foreign multinationals who run off without paying their taxes after underreporting the extractions. Now, anyway, let's continue. She went on to say, prosperity is not birthed from ideological declarations, but from pragmatic economic strategies. Countries that have successfully lifted millions out of poverty, from Singapore to South Korea, did so by creating transparent, investment-friendly environments, developing human capital, establishing strong, predictable regulatory frameworks, encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation. Now, how come she couldn't just say that from the beginning and leave it at that? How come you didn't just say African nations should, create transparent, investment-friendly environments and strong, regulatory frameworks? Why did she have to say, this is why I'm not down with the AES, this is why I'm not down with Captain Ibrahim Traoré? There is no connection. And then on top of that, to throw extra dirt on Patrice Lumumba and Thomas Sankara and black men who've been dead and gone and were murdered violently decades ago, there was no connection. Why did you have to slander all those dead black men for no reason? That's because you are here to push the agenda of the Atlas Network, right? You are in the pay of the Atlas Network and you are on the white man's bed. So therefore, you are here to push the agenda of the adversary, right? We got to watch individuals like you, especially your mixed race children, if you have any children. But women like you, your mixed race children, we got to watch them because they're the type that are going to come back and wage war against us in the future, like they've done many times in the past throughout history. Now let's continue. She went on to say, Forget about military coups and military takeovers. They don't solve poverty, create jobs, or bring investment. Instead, they cause chaos, scare the investors, aka the white man, and leave people struggling even more. The real revolution, the one that builds brighter futures, is economic freedom. Listen, she done spent the whole essay defending the interests of the Western corporate multinationals, and now she's talking about economic freedom. See, this is the delusions of what happens when you laying up, tooting that ass up for the adversary. Now let's continue. Africa stands at a critical junction. The choice is not between complete submission to external powers or isolated, economically stagnant nationalism. The path forward requires a nuanced, pragmatic approach that prioritizes economic freedom, transparent governments, and strategic international collaboration. So, economic freedom and international collaboration, right? Basically saying, listen, once you understand that this woman is in the pay of the white man and she's in the white man's bed, you understand why she's talking on both sides of her mouth. Anyway, true decolonization has nothing to do with removing foreign flags. It's more about removing the mental chains of victimhood. Now, time out. Is she really saying that us kicking the white man out the country, this is us playing the victim? Are you serious right now? My God, brother. Now, if I made any video in the past, brothers, I think this video definitely makes the case why I tell y'all, only deal with black women who only deal with black men. The reason why I say that is because it goes deep into the psychology and the mentality, right? You kind of got to contort and distort yourself in order to mix and mingle with these other groups, you know? So, like I said, only deal with a woman who only deals with you. Like myself, I only deal with black women, so I can never be compatible with a woman like this defending the interests of the foreign multinationals. We'd be at the dinner table ready to fight. We would be at the dinner table ready to fight, right? A woman sitting in front of me defending the interests of the foreign multinationals that's running off committing tax fraud, I would literally have a stroke right there and die. I would literally stroke out and die. That's why I stay away from women like that, because I know that's going to take years off my life, brother. I'm telling you, y'all think I just be talking, brother. Find a woman that is compatible with you mentally, spiritually, psychologically. Obviously, this man found a woman that's compatible with him. Right? He found a woman that's compatible with his worldview, that takes the sides of the foreign multinationals, that believes in the white man having military bases inside the country, right? So he found a woman compatible with him. All I tell y'all brothers is find a woman compatible with you, because that's what I do. If you think I'm radical, right? Some of y'all think I'm radical, I'm too much. If you heard the views of the woman that I deal with, she's worse than me. She's worse than me. I'm PG, right? Listen, she would get if she made a YouTube channel, her channel would get deleted. You think I stand on business? My girl, she really stand on the business. She stand on the business for real, you know? So like I said, brother, it's all about compatibility. Anyway, let's continue. She went on to say, it's about understanding that our destiny is in our hands and that we are not passive recipients of aid or sympathy, but active creators of value. The most revolutionary act for an African today is not to give a speech about oppression. Start a business, solve a problem, create value. Now, listen. I don't understand why is she throwing shade at the captain? So the captain, he's not starting businesses. He's not investing in projects and ventures. He's not solving problems. He's not creating value. So you mean to tell me we have to only do one or the other? We can only either pay homage to the ancestors or start businesses. We can't do both. That's crazy. See? But that's what happens when you laying up with the adversary. You got to stop talking about the ancestors. That's crazy. Anyways, man. I'm not going to be here too long. Anyways, it's your boy Nefakari Desaline. Join the Patreon, man. Link in the description. Pin comment at the top. Gain access to 20 videos. And I dropped 2 fire classic videos earlier today. Classic Nefakari. Old school classic Nefakari 5-star content. Go check out them 2 videos I dropped today on the Patreon and gain access to all videos in the future, as well as 20 videos that have never been on the YouTube. Anyways, man, it's your boy Nefakari Desaline back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the album, Sahel 1816. Go to my homepage, go to my playlist section. Enjoy the album. Join the Patreon, NTD 1814. And I'm gone. Peace.
Told me she loved me and said that it's real. So independent, ain't signing no deal. Feel like a king and I'm up at Cap Henry. I'm in the citadel, top of the hill. Trying to run up and we let off a cannon. Secret location, I'm keeping it sealed. You ain't retaliate, Franco Medina. Came to the country and he got killed. You ain't retaliate, Rafi Mans. Thought you was loyal, thought you was real. Didn't even want to come pick up the body. Had your man locked up, he died in the cell. Up at the palace, I'm throwing a party. Right on the south and I'm giving them hell. And my little shorty, she looking exotic. African features, she casting a spell. Run to the the check like I work on my fitness. Wake up each morning and handle my business. Say that she love me, she want my genetics. Wanna get married and make it official. Wanna get married and have my babies. Up in the city, I'm riding Mercedes. Up in the city, they treat me like royalty. Feeling like Dolph, talking about lords. Spreading my wings and I had to get fly. Up in the top, an incredible vibe. Came from the bottom, I'm up in the sky. Gave one look and said, baby, you fine. Wake up each morning and handle my business. They just be talking, you see me, I live it. Ride on my enemies, sounding like thunder. 1804, got that shit in my spirit. 1804 when I step in the building. 1804, and that's word of my mother. Rock my women and die for my brother. Never gon' fall when I'm deep under pressure. Tell them we back and they better accept it. Move like a king, every step is divine. Ride on my enemies with no exception. Taking revenge and I'm taking what's mine. Pour up a drink and it's time that we toast. Watching my back, keep my enemies close. Only the family, I stick with my brothers. Candace position outside of the coast. Heavy artillery for the protection. Move like a general, stick to the code. Feel like a king when I'm up in the north. Beautiful women, they trying to get chose. Launch an invasion all over the south. Capture the capital with all my woes. Look at my energy and my demeanor. Dripping that ice and that's head to my toes. Lately I'm flexing all on the Americans. Flexing my muscle on missing my road. Just got a carriage just coming from London. Boy, that shit cash, I ain't taking no loans. Boy, that shit cash, that's fresh on the boat. Enemy know I got millions in gold. Enemy know I got choppers and cannons. How did I do it? They can't understand it. How did I do it? It's cause I'm relentless. Call me King Harry, my name is cemented. Call me King Harry, I'm up in the palace. Call me King Harry, I'm raising the status.